The purpose of this presentation is to examine future directions and options for the Bralorne Volunteer Fire Department. This information was presented at a public meeting on June the 12th in Bralorne. Based on the consultation at that meeting, the Regional District is offering the opportunity for residents unable to attend to give their feedback through this web series. The Regional District has a mission, and that is to enhance the quality of life of constituents through the facilitation of regional and community services for the benefit of future and present generations. In Electoral Area A, your elected official is Debbie DeMayer as the Electoral Area Director, and her alternate is Norm Verner. She represents the communities of Goldbridge, Bralorne, Gun Lake, Gun Creek, Tyotin Lake, and Marshall Lake. Just a note on how the Regional District funds its services. Currently, the SLRD has 89 services or cost centers. Each service is accounted for separately using a dedicated fund. This means that, unlike in a municipality, money cannot move between cost centers. It must be used for the cost center for which it is collected. Each cost center or service must identify its own revenues, and costs must be shared by the members that participate in the service. So when we're talking about fire protection in Bralorne, it is those individuals that pay into the Bralorne Fire Protection Area service. There are restrictions on the annual increases in tax that can be related to a service each year, and operating deficits are not allowed. Any deficiency is carried forward as an expense to the following year, reducing the amount of funding available for that service in the following year. Fire service in Bralorne was established in 1975 under SLRD Bylaw 69. It's a fire service that's operated by the Bralorne Fire Protection Society. All equipment, apparatus, and the fire hall are owned by the society. This is a map of the fire service area. The Bralorne VFD covers an area of 4.35 square kilometers and handles approximately 0 to 5 calls per year, and that's an average from between 2008 to 2014. Current chief is Nigel Hopp. There's 20 to 28 members with at least 5 available to respond at any given time. 2 members with basic firefighter and train the trainer certification, and most members are S100 basic wildfire protection trained. There are 2 fire vehicles, a 1987 Mack Anderson diesel pumper and a 1996 Ford F350 4x4 utility vehicle donated by BC Hydro. Back in 2013, the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District conducted a fire service review to look at all of the fire departments within the regional district. A number of improvements were identified for all fire departments, including Bralorne. From August 2014 to August 2015, the SLRD contracted with a fire service consultant, Darren Oiki, who's the current fire chief in Lillooet and has an established history working with fire services. And he worked to lay the groundwork for the improvements identified in the fire service review. A major portion of the work that he did was to create an action plan for each of the fire department to address immediate priorities. If you'd like to see the fire service review, you can follow the link above. Included in the fire service review was significant research on how other regional districts provide fire service, including bylaws, policies, procedures, etc. The fire service review also looked at the replacement of fire apparatus and interim agreements for fire departments, as well as declarations of service level to bring regional district departments into line with the Office of the Fire Commissioner Minimum Standards Playbook. Following the fire service review, the SLRD implemented a records management system which allows fire chiefs to improve their record keeping in a digital format. All fire departments share the cost of a training system, which is an online repository of all the training required to reach the British Columbia Basic Firefighter Certification or the NFPA 1001 certification, which is a basic firefighter level. Occupational health and safety requirements were also explained to all volunteer fire departments, and they were assisted with forming occupational health and safety committees. The immediate priority recommendations for the Bralorne VFD were pursue an interim operating agreement with the SLRD, acquire or maintain liability insurance as soon as possible. This has been done. Establish a safety committee and initiate annual pump, hose, and ladder inspections, along with declining to respond outside of the fire protection area without specific agreements or SLRD authority. All of the fire departments received this as a priority recommendation because when a fire department responds outside of its designated protection area, the firefighters lose their workers' compensation as well as liability insurance protection. So it's in terms of keeping firefighters safe and protecting responders, this is a very important point. Another immediate priority recommendation was to pursue the development of a response plan with Bralorne gold mines. There has been some discussion, but this has not been completed yet. And then in conjunction with SLRD, develop a constitution or document, a course of action with objectives to assist the fire department grow. And then there was the observation that the current funding for this department at its current service level is not adequate to provide service to the community. Other recommendations included initiating all firefighters into the BC Firefighter Certification Program, decline to pursue medical first responder service until previous priorities had been met, and catalog specific priorities that are difficult to reach, properties that are difficult to reach, and develop pre-fire plans. There are a couple of properties that may be removed from the protection area because they can no longer be accessed. Secondary priorities were some physical improvements at the fire hall, reconsideration of the idea of initial suppression taking place by residents in the area, bringing all the hoses that are currently out in the community into the fire hall, and discontinue use of the siren, as the siren is not Fire Underwriter Survey compliant, and we can explore what the Fire Underwriter Survey is and what it does in following slides. And lastly, installation of vehicle exhaust ventilation and enrollment of all members in WMIS. So the Fire Service Review identified a number of options for the Bralorne Fire Protection Area and the Bralorne Fire Department. First of these was the consolidation of Bralorne and Gun Lake, along with Goldbridge, Gun Creek, and Tyotin Lake Road into a combined Area A fire department, transferring the Bralorne service from the SLRD to society auspices, and authorize the society to authorize the service, etc. And then improve the equipment and manpower at Bralorne to meet the existing Fire Underwriter Survey dwelling protection grade, and again we'll address what those mean in just a few slides here. Option 4 was to terminate the service. All of the departments reviewed received service termination as an option. There were a couple of alternative fire service options that have been identified since, one of which was the conversion of existing service to a fire prevention service. And this hasn't been fully scoped yet, but a fire prevention service would not have an active fire department per se, but would pursue community fire smart activities funded through the same mechanism, as well as community risk assessment and the possibility of homeowner grants to improve the resistance of their structure to fire. So the Fire Underwriters Survey is an insurance organization in Canada that rates communities' fire services. And they look at two things in a community. They look at the dwelling protection grade, and that's related to residential, and we'll be focusing on that here. They also look at the public fire protection classification. That's for commercial buildings. We won't be touching on that. It's a classification that insurance companies use to set the rates for fire insurance in a given community. FUS is the only organization authorized to publish these grades in Canada, and the grading reflects a community's ability to handle fires in single-family dwellings. The dwelling protection grade is the rating mechanism that's used. It's a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the best. DPGs 1 and 2, very difficult to achieve. These refer to urban fire departments with career firefighters and extensive municipal resources and things like that. DPG 5 essentially says that the area is unprotected or does not meet the minimum criteria for recognition by the FUS. When a community works with its fire department to improve its DPG, insurance rates usually go down. However, every insurance company has the right to interpret the FUS rating using its own criteria. Generally, however, the lower the DPG, the larger the discount in fire insurance rates. And this is just a look at some of the factors that are used in determining dwelling protection grades. Again, here we look at 1 and 2, which are considered protected. You can see that there's some substantial infrastructure and resources, including 24/7 career firefighters, an 8-kilometer response by standard pumper to the furthest extent of the fire service area, water supply. And when we talk about water supply in the DPGs 1 and 2, we're talking about municipal hydrants, etc. Now, 3A, 3B, 4, and 5. 3A is considered protected. It does require a hydrant system and a minimum of 15 volunteers available at any given time to respond. 3B doesn't require hydrants but must have an ability to shuttle water to a fire scene that's reliable, as well as the 15 volunteers. Semi-protected, again, requires the water system, but it can be an improvised water system to a certain degree. It requires standard pumper and water tender and tanker. Again, 15 volunteers needed. Option 5, or dwelling protection grade 5, does not require a water system because it is considered unprotected. And this is just a review of some of the language that's used in some of the terminology. So what is a standard pumper? What is a water tanker? What does it do? Standpipes, though they are present in many communities in the SLRD, are not recognized as fire hydrants and cannot be used as part of the water supply system because there is no engineered design standard in Canada that goes with them. However, private water supplies such as those found on some industrial properties or on farms can be used for insurance grading purposes, provided the owner-operator has given FUS engineered documentation, etc., to prove that they meet standard. DPGs also look at whether firefighters live and work within a regional travel distance to the fire hall, and whether the extent of the fire service area is more than 8 kilometers away. And FUS has chosen that distance based on the idea that 8 kilometers is the furthest distance a fire department can travel and still have a reasonable ability to put a fire out. The absolute minimum number of volunteered firefighters considered within the DPG is 10, and a maximum age of apparatus can be considered to be 30. However, most insurance companies look for a minimum of 15 volunteer firefighters. My apologies, there's an error in that line there. And an absolute maximum of 20 years on apparatus. This just talks about some of the challenges with water provision and the idea that without municipal type hydrants, a system needs to be put in place. Now, this system can be used to achieve DPGs 3B and 4. However, it must be available 24/7, 365 and meet the FUS standards. Currently, the Bralorne hydrant system does not meet the FUS requirements. Along with all that, DPGs look at the fire hall and fire hall site, firefighting equipment that's present, emergency comms equipment that's present, capital reserves in place to replace aging apparatus and equipment, and the personal protective clothing that's available to firefighters. Obviously, this leads to the necessity of an annual operating budget. So, insurance ratings or insurance premiums are based on the DPG rating set by the Fire Underwriter Survey. The FUS is used by insurance companies to set fire insurance rates in a community, though each insurance company can interpret the DPGs in their own way. When we look at providing fire services, we need to look at a balance between the cost of insurance in a community currently versus the cost of providing the service. And in an ideal situation, the cost of taxation to provide funding to a fire department would be offset by the reduction in insurance premiums that residents would pay. However, not necessarily or generally the case. Given that, there is still a value to fire protection that doesn't meet the FUS standard, and that's a value that's found in life safety and property protection for the residents in that area. We looked at the insurance premium, the impacts of insurance premiums from various DPGs, and we'll start at the bottom there. And DPG 5 is considered unprotected and receives no discount. In a DPG area or 5 area, residents will pay the maximum amount of fire insurance. DPGs 4 and 3B are considered semi-protected and can receive a reduction of up to 60% plus or minus from the unprotected rate. When we start to get into those urban or very well-resourced departments at 3A, 2, and 1, those are considered protected, and they can get an additional 32% from the reduction from the semi-protected rate. So, part of what we did was, in putting this presentation together, we looked at the option of a combined fire department FUS compliant, so DPG 4 or 3B, for Area A. And we looked at the capital costs, came out to about $565,000. And that's the idea, with a central hall in Goldbridge and some satellite halls, potentially one in Gun Lake and one in another location to be determined. The current tax assessment base for Area A, as you can see, is fairly substantial. And then we looked at operating budgets for the options. So the current one is on the left-hand side there to give you an idea of what the service currently costs. Moving over to a fire brigade or a contribution-only service operated by the Bralorne Society, we can see that there's a slight reduction in costs there. When we look at bringing the Bralorne department up to FUS compliance, just as a single department, still covering the same service area, you can see there's a dramatic increase in the tax requisition that's required. Then we look at something that we're calling the Regional District Administrative Full Department, and I'll talk about what a Regional District Administrative Full Department means in the following slides. But again, that's another little jump up there. A combined department in Area A, and we can see that that's a substantial increase again. And then a combined department with Regional District Administration, another slight jump in cost. So those are some pretty large numbers there. But what we need to look at is the cost per home or per $100,000 of assessed home value, and we'll get to that at the end of the presentation. So this slide really is just for your reference at this time. In addition to money, there are other challenges. Fire hall may be the easiest part. Not having sufficient volunteers and water is a big hurdle. Not everyone may fall within the 8-kilometer restriction that's required, and those people that don't are not going to receive the insurance benefit from a whole service department. And this could be an issue if we expand the service area to draw in most of Area A. Not everyone in the service area may fall within that 8-kilometer range. It could take a number of years to develop a combined fire department, as well as could take a number of years for an FUS compliant fire department to be created simply for Bralorne. And again, very hard, if not impossible, to achieve DPGs 1 and 2 in this area based on the tax assessment-based population, number of firefighters, etc. Regional District Fire Service Administration is something that we're exploring currently to assist the fire chiefs. The new requirements under the playbook minimum standards from the Office of the Fire Commissioner make being a volunteer fire chief pretty much a full-time job, and many of the chiefs have an additional full-time job. So the SLRD is looking at ways where we can take some of the weight off those chiefs and maybe realize some cost and savings and some sustainability benefits along the way. So we look at all the fire departments in the regional district becoming regional district operated fire departments. Currently, there are a number of societies that operate fire departments. In this case, it would become essentially a department of the regional district. All the chiefs would become paid SLRD employees. I'll talk about the benefits of that in a following slide. And a dedicated SLRD staff member would support all of the chiefs with administrative tasks related to running a fire department, like budgeting, scheduling of training, equipment maintenance, that sort of thing. And then societies, those that are currently operating departments, would step back a bit and serve at an advisory and support role to the fire chiefs, and they'd work on fundraising and supporting the firefighters in their community. The costs for this program are not insignificant. They would be shared amongst all 6 of the volunteer fire departments in the regional district. They would include a regional district fire service administration bylaw that would supersede the 6 existing bylaws and be updated to reflect new relationships and realities. What are the service levels across the district? What are the relationships to the regional district, etc. Regional district fire service admin would also facilitate resource sharing, and that's hard resources like equipment and soft resources like training between the volunteer fire departments, and provide a coordination point for growing the fire service across the regional district. It gives a unified approach to fire service delivery, standard operating guidelines, standard operating procedures, with the intention being that if a firefighter were to move from Britannia Beach to Bralorne, things would essentially be done in the same way, even though there's a difference in geography, a difference in staffing, and a difference in equipment. Operational autonomy for fire chiefs. This means that the fire chiefs are the ones who ultimately remain in command of the fire scene when there's an active fire, but they're supported with the administrative side of their job. And it's a structure that assists departments with change at their own pace. So obviously some of our departments are more developed, some less developed, and this is an opportunity for a regional district staff member to meet those folks where they're at, meet each of those departments where they're at, and help them move forward through financial and strategic support and guidance. Regional Fire Service Administration would see all assets, that's all the trucks, all the ladders, transferred into SLRD control, and the SLRD would then take responsibility for putting them into our maintenance cycle and ensuring that reserves were set aside to replace as needed. The Fire Chiefs Committee, which was struck in February of 2016, will continue to meet on a semi-annual basis, and that's an opportunity for the chiefs to get together and talk about challenges, opportunities, that kind of thing. And we hope that through this model, we could see an increase in sustainability through SLRD-sponsored mutual aid agreements, bulk purchasing consumables and equipment, sharing training opportunities, resources, etc. Paid fire chiefs. Why paid fire chiefs? Well, right now, each of the fire departments is responsible for paying their own WorkSafe BC premiums, as well as liability insurance. And for several of the departments, that takes up the majority of their budget. So by paying the fire chiefs, and we're not necessarily talking about a full-time salary in this instance, each of the chiefs already receives a stipend or an honorarium, and we would simply convert that into a salary for those individuals, would make them SLRD employees. That means that all the firefighters that each chief supervise become direct regional district volunteers, and they would be covered under the SLRD's insurance indemnification. The savings that can be realized from each department no longer having to pay for insurance could then be directed towards either paying for the cost of the fire service administration or operational requirements for each department. So for Bralorne, there are 7 options for future directions. I want to be very clear at this point that this presentation and the feedback we receive from the community is not a final decision. What we're looking for is to narrow down these options to the ones most preferred by the community so that we can start building those out. Each of the options presented in front of you will require the regional district to come back to the community again for future public consultation. And in some cases, the changes will require a vote. Clearly, option 4 and 5, which are the combined departments, we're coming out to the areas that currently have established fire services first. If this is the answer that we get from Bralorne and Gun Lake, option 4 or 5, then we will continue to expand the consultation out into the rest of Area A so that we can include those people in a decision eventually around a combined department. So once again, the survey that we're asking you to complete following this presentation is not a final decision. It's simply a way for the regional district to gauge the community's desires in terms of future direction. So we'll review each of these options individually. And once again, there is a survey following this presentation, and if you could complete it, it would be much appreciated. So option 1 is a contribution-only service, and that would see the Bralorne Fire Department operate as a fire brigade, operated by the society, providing exterior-only fire protection. There would be no reduction in insurance rates. The requisition for this would be about $26,500 a year, and that translates within the Bralorne Fire Protection Area to about $158 a year per $100,000 of assessed home value. So if you have a $200,000 home, then you can double that contribution, and that's where we get our costs. Option 2 is a standalone FUS compliant, fully functioning department, and that's a department that would be at a DPG 4 or DPG 3B, so semi-protected. The SLRD would operate that department with the society providing support. It would be exterior protection and would realize a significant reduction in insurance rates for those within the 8 or potentially 13 kilometer radius. There is some room for the regional district to negotiate with the fire underwriter service about the size of the service area. The requisition for that would be approximately $160,000 a year, meaning that an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value would be $956. Option 3 is the same as option 2, but with the regional district administration to support the fire chief. Again, exterior only. It would recognize a reduction in insurance rates for those within the radius. The cost for that annually would be $177,000, and that translates to an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value to $1,050, give or take. Option 4 is the Combined Area A Regional District Fire Department, and that's an expanded service area that includes Gun Lake, Goldbridge, Bralorne, Gun Creek, and Tyotin Lake. This would be operated by the regional district. Again, exterior only firefighting. This would realize a significant reduction in fire insurance rates for those within the 8 kilometers, potentially 13. And in order to cover off that large geographic area, we would have to look at satellite halls and where they were located. Because this is a complicated development process, it's going to take 2 to 3 years at least. The annual requisition for that would be about $221, but because there are far more people paying into the service, you'd be looking at an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value of $134 per year. Option 5 is the same as option 4, again with the administrative support provided by the regional district. Cost on this is $238,000 a year, and that translates to an annual cost per $100,000 of assessed home value of $144. Option 6 is to cease operations. All departments within the review were given this option, so this is not put in to shock anyone, nor is it a suggestion. It is merely just another option. And ceasing operations, of course, for the Bralorne Fire Department would mean no fire protection, no reduction in insurance rates, but also no costs. Option 7, which has not yet been fully scoped, includes the conversion of the current fire service area to a fire prevention service. And this would mean fire smart activities funded through the regional district to reduce wildfire threat to Bralorne. Projects on public and private lands would be possible. There would not be a reduction in insurance rates, and we have not yet scoped the cost of this service. However, it is an option. So thank you very much for your time today. My name is Ryan Wainwright. I'm the SLRD Emergency Program Manager and Interim Fire Services Administrator. If you have any questions, please contact me. Email is generally best, though my phone number is posted there. And please continue on to fill out the survey so that we can get your feedback on the future of the Bralorne Fire Department and possible options. Thank you very much.